an impressive beat, I suppose, on data center revenue in the second quarter just gone and overall revenues. Then we asked the question, why? Why was it better? You know, they telegraphed that pretty well. And my goodness, don't you love it when there's consistency? When something that we were talking about continues to happen, and that is shareholder-friendly policy. And I think that $50 billion of additional share buybacks, no one would be sort of disappointed with that. The stock up, ish in after hours.
Yeah, we we were talking earlier about if things came in line with expectations, because expectations were so high, you might not see a huge reaction, Carol.
Yeah.
And even with a $50 billion share buyback, we're barely seeing stock move in the after hours.
Yeah, just up about 1%. Hey, digging into the press release, you're going to talk with Jensen Huang, founder and CEO of Nvidia, later on. He says Hopper demand remains strong and the anticipation for Blackwell is incredible. He said the company achieved record revenues as global data centers are in full throttle to modernize the entire computing stack with accelerated computing and generative AI. Like, we know this guy knows how to speak and talk about his company, his market, his industry. But what are you looking for as you go through this press release, and what are you thinking about that conversation you're going to have with him?
Yeah, my eyes went straight to the Blackwell commentary and the anticipation being high. Excitement, anticipation are interesting words, but they are not a granular explanation of what's happening with Blackwell. The reporting was that due to the complexity of its design, it has two compute dies. Basically, think about two triangles with a split between them, because it's so big. It's so much bigger than any other high-performance GPU that's gone before it. And the reporting was that this presented a production challenge. And so we want some specific detail on that. But again, this is classic Jensen Huang, that everything is intact, the AI investment cycle is there, and clearly he's bullish because Nvidia is 99% of the market for this range of AI accelerators.
Shares bouncing around a little bit, but they are now lower by about 2.2% in after-hours trading, Ed. I do wonder what the demand story is from customers now that we're seeing the latest results from Nvidia. What's the story that you're seeing? I should say shares continue to move lower, down about 3% in after hours.
So this is why we go straight to the guide or outlook for the current period or the fiscal third quarter. Because of the timing of Nvidia's earnings, today, August 28th, it comes at the end of earnings season where the capital expenditures guidance from the biggest Nvidia customers has been and gone. So if you look at the capital expenditures guidance of a Microsoft, I think Carol pointed out very smartly that about 45% of Microsoft CapEx goes directly to Nvidia. We knew that they were committed to spending, but how confident is Nvidia in that trend continuing over a longer time horizon? You look at the stock in after hours, down now almost 5%. One has to keep their feet on the ground and ask, is that so severe? Is it so surprising given how high a bar this quarter was and how lofty expectations were?
150% higher so far this year at a 5% decline after earnings that beat estimates but didn't blow estimates out of the water.
Well, and I think you go to the outlook, like you keep, emphasizing, Ed, this high idea, and I know you put it out on the blog of what came in, all right, better than what the average estimate was. But when you think about the high numbers that some were expecting almost as much as $38 billion for that third quarter revenue, like that is going to color how investors, react to this number. They were expecting more, a lot more.
Yeah, and like I know that this is something that Bloomberg people always say, but you also just have to give some sort of context of where the stock trades, right? It is a stock that trades at 38 times forward 12-month earnings. I always look at relative strength index, RSI on the terminal, but one data set that I've tracked is that retail investors have absolutely piled into this stock of late. It had all of the hallmarks of something that was set to swing in either direction based on options market trading. And I think the point that I'm making, without telling our audience about how the sausage is made too much, one very wise editor said on our planning call that even if it beats expectations or or consensus estimates, this is a likely outcome because of where we've positioned ourselves in the market going into the print.
Meaning that expectations are just so high for this company.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct. I think, Tim, that's probably the understatement of the century.
Well, you're also dealing with base effects, as we mentioned. The comps are really tough, given where this was a year ago and where investors expect it to go in terms of growth rate. I mean, as Abigail Doolittle pointed out on our air, they were seeing north of 200% growth some quarters.
Well, this is something I used to think about with Apple. Like, when it didn't live up to expectations, it got harder and harder to move the needle on that. And yet, when you look at the numbers, and I understand it's all relative and you got to give the context in terms of growth and so on and so forth, but Nvidia is still selling a lot of stuff, right? And it is the game in town if you want those advanced AI chips.
Okay, guys, I'm really sorry to go on the tangent.
Go.
These headlines are super important.
Go.
Nvidia is saying it expects several $billion in Blackwell revenues in the fourth quarter. Ian King's just hit the button on the red headline. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
That this was the question, that Nvidia makes a commitment to bring a new generation of its AI accelerator to market annually. And there have been the reporting on the design challenges of Blackwell. What Nvidia is confirming is that they will book really, really significant revenue on that product in the early stage of its ramp in the final 3 months of the calendar year or its fiscal fourth quarter. But they do make a concession that they had to change the Blackwell mask production step. I have to plead ignorance on the technicalities of that. I'm going to run to Ian's desk and ask him. But they are at least talking about it. I think that this commentary comes from not the earnings release necessarily, but the CFO commentary that comes as an appendix to it. So we'll dig into that as we go.